Welcome to the Head Shepherd Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO here at NextGen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, thank you to our two fantastic sponsors for continuing to sponsor this podcast. MSD Animal Health is perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia and for their Allflex range across the world, with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Heinegger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Heinegger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. Hope you're having a great morning wherever you are listening to this. Might be not the morning, but if you are listening on Monday, hopefully you're back into action after a couple of short weeks, and hopefully there's been a bit of moisture around your part of the world, if you need it, that is, depending on where you are. This week on the show, we've got Sherri Symons on the show. Sherri has developed Aussie wool pellets, which are a wool pellet which goes into gardens. When I spoke to her, she was off to the Melbourne Garden Show to sell her wares to the folks down there, and actually one of our team members, Georgia Buckles, came across her in Kyneton, and that's why she's on the show. She found her product, and as you'll hear, Sherri's a bit of a live wire, so it was great to have a chat with her about the journey of taking strong wool, which has been suffering from low wool prices for a fair while now, and trying to add value to that. It involves her putting most of her savings all of her savings on the line to import a pelleting machine and develop this product, which is using all the great benefits of wool, but in a gardening sense rather than on in a garment sense. Obviously all those moisture retention and all the good things that we know about wool, she has been marketing. So she's doing other things other than pellets as well with wool, felting for weed matting. Yeah, some cool products going on there. Trying to value add to that sort of 30 plus micron wool that's really suffered over the last number of years now. Before we get into that, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things going on. Firstly, Sophie has written an article getting started with data recording in sheep. You can find that on the NextGen Agri website, or there's a link to it on the hub. Both great places to go for our articles. Again, they come out weekly, so good resources there. If you've got any questions, or a lot of frequently asked questions in that article from Sophie, a really great sort of summary of all the things, what you might record, why you might record it. And so if you sort of are on the fence, it'd be a great resource to go to. By the time this goes out, we're only a week away from being in Tamworth at the Angus Expo, all part of the world, the Angus World Forum. And so, going to be really enjoy being in Tamworth next weekend. So I'd love to see you there. If you are attending that day, come and find us. We've got a site, NextGen Agri site, as well as recording the podcast live from the venue, and a talk as well. And also judging a debate competition. So a few things going on in Tamworth. Would love to catch up with you. Drop me an email if you're going to be there, or just come and find us at the site. We'll try and be there as much as we can. Yeah, looking forward to that. And it's going to be a great event. Righto, we'll get underway with this week's show with Sherri Symons. Welcome, Sherri Symons, to Head Shepherd.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have a chin wag.
Great to have you on. So Georgia Buckles, who works for us, met you in Kyneton, I think, a month or two ago, and she said we definitely need to get you on the show. So we've done what we're told, and we've got you on the show. I guess something that's pretty close to lots of our listeners' hearts is the plight of the strong wool game, I suppose, and inability to make ends meet on that end of the spectrum. And you've obviously taken that into your own hands with developing a use for that strong wool. Before we maybe get to that, maybe just run us through kind of career pre getting into your current role, and I guess life on the farm, and then as a wool classer.
Yeah, so I'm a fifth generation farmer from southwest Victoria, and we've got 5,500 crossbred sheep, and we've got a handful of cattle as well. It's myself, my mum and dad, and my brother and his two kids on the farm. And so I was determined not to be part of agriculture all through my high school career, and went to uni and discovered I didn't like the idea of being in the city, and I liked essentially getting my hands dirty. So I went and studied at one of our local agricultural colleges, Glen Ormiston College, and studied my wool classing certificate, my advanced diploma of rural business management and diploma in agriculture. But when I left there, I went and basically travelled Australia and was a wool classer, wool handler, went to New Zealand wool handling as well. So I actually learned how to use a broom. And then, I've worked on...
teach you that.
Yeah, I've worked on farms here and there in the quiet times, and obviously back and forth at home. I got to a point in my career where being a wool classer, there was not really any challenges anymore. It was like, don't get me wrong, I love classing, and I still, go and do a day here and there, even now. And but I needed a challenge, so I had the opportunity to learn how to become a trainer and to teach others how to do wool classing. So I did that for 2.5, 3 years. And that was absolutely incredible, and I loved doing that. And in those 3 years as well, my dad and my brother had said to me, "Sherri, you need to do something with this wool," because due to the prices, obviously, we had stored 5 years worth of our wool on farm, and it had taken up a lot of shed space. And as farmers would know, shed space is highly valuable. And so they were getting quite frustrated that, there's not much that we can do with our crossbred wool, and there's no point, selling it, because the cost of us getting it down to, market is going to be just as much as what we're going to get in return. So, we've got to think outside the box and value add. So during my teaching period, for 2.5 years, I researched what is being done around the world with crossbred wool, because there's got to be something being done. And in my research, I came across wool pellets, and I'm like, that is absolutely spectacular. Why are we not doing that here in Australia? It's being done around the world. And so I thought, well, we should be doing it here in Australia. Did my research, did a lot of hard yards, talking to a lot of people around the world, and decided that instead of buying a house, I would invest my life savings into purchasing the equipment from overseas. And I'm not going to go half-hearted into it and just buy a cheapo version. I think it was definitely a leap of faith, that's for sure. But with my absolute passion for wool as a whole, but my passion has always been with crossbred sheep and crossbred wool. Why? I don't know. I just have, don't get me wrong, I love merino as well, but crossbred wool for me is where it's at. And so I purchased the equipment, and it came to Australia, and it has been a huge learning curve ever since then. During this time period as well, I was part of an accelerator program, and for our local shires. And that at the end of that program, we had like a mini Shark Tank where we could go and present our idea and our business, and the winner would get a $10,000 grant. And I was lucky enough to come away as the winner of that. And really, without that accelerator program, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so what that allowed me to do was it allowed me in my literally first 12 months to be able to go to the Melbourne Flower and Garden Show last year. And that's where I'm about to head this coming week. So I'm going for the second time. And yeah, so I started with just the wool pellets, which I called Aussie wool pellets, because, why not? Like, it's Australian wool and it's pellets. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But something that I'm discovering and have discovered in the last 3 years is the lack of knowledge that people have around wool, just basic knowledge. So anybody who's essentially under 50 in the general public does not know that wool's biodegradable, thinks wool is extremely expensive, and doesn't understand why I'd be putting such an expensive product into the ground. Some people don't realise that sheep even need to be shorn. There is this huge knowledge gap that I'm coming across. So it's not just trying to explain to people what Aussie wool pellets do, it's explaining to people the basic properties and all these incredible benefits that wool has. So I'm discovering those challenges along the way. But of course, you can't be a one-trick pony either. So through further research from around the world, I have come across people making pots from felted wool. And I thought, hang on a minute, we're not doing that here in Australia either. And through my teaching connections, I do know Jim Robinson from Robinson Wools in Geelong, where they scour and carbonise wool, one of the last 2 scour and carbonisers in Australia. So, through connections with him and then through, meeting other people as well, Tony Sullivan from Matilda's Own, where I get the wool that is scoured and carbonised, made into felt. I've built these really great relationships with these two businesses where they're really supportive of me utilising Australian wool, but not only that, but utilising it here in Australia through other businesses. So keeping it here, keeping that carbon footprint really low. So the wool comes from the farm, goes down to Jim, and then it gets scoured and carbonised at Jim's, making sure that there's no seeds left in the wool. It's nice and clean. It then goes to Tony's team at Matilda's Own, which is also in Geelong. So I come down, I pick it up, I take it to those guys, and I spend the day with Tony's team and create the fabric that is for my wool pots and also for my, what I call blanket mulch mats. And utilising these products made from 100% wool to benefit our plants, benefit the environment, and, essentially utilise wool to its full potential on that coarse end of the scale. Because, I do talk to a lot of groups. How many people have 100% crossbred wool, or they have 100% wool carpets anymore? I understand it is expensive and it is more expensive, but, just times have changed. But I really do believe the lack of education around wool, and look, I dare say it's not just wool, it's entire agricultural industries, that there is a lack of education of the general public. But once people start to find out all these incredible properties of wool, they are just absolutely blown away and keen to try. And that's really one thing that, I'd like people to take away is just give it a go. For the cost of a couple of coffees, why not?
And I think you're right. There is a lack of knowledge, but I think it takes brands or products that actually demonstrate those characteristics of wool that's what sells it really. Like you can tell people until you're blue in the face, but having a wool pellet that sits in their plants and keeps it hydrated and biodegrades, or putting a wool garment on your back and having that feel and understanding how it's regulating your temperature, those sort of things are what sells wool essentially. It's an amazing product on lots of levels. But I think grabbing the bull by the horns as you have and finding ways to get it into people's hands that they don't care what they put in their pots really, as long as it does the job they're looking to get done. And obviously a lot of those people will want to be looking for a solution that is sustainable and isn't accidentally introducing a heap of chemicals or something into their back gardens. But I'm just trying to imagine what it's like when you get the wool pelleting machine in the mail and you've got to put it together. How did that little process roll?
Luckily, majority of it was already put together, and it's more come down to, all the little intricacies that I have learnt over the time period where, there's lots of things that can influence, the productivity of how much can come out, and, things that are outside of my control. And being I'm still a very small business, but I figure, look, I can get out there and put my face to a brand and give it a really good hot crack and, make sure that people start to talk more about wool. And, you have to be a tall poppy sometimes. And, definitely here in Australia, nobody likes the tall poppy, but sometimes it takes people to stand up and be like, look at this product that I've got. It's incredible. And it's not just for me. It extends out to the industry of those people who are producing, our prime lambs essentially, because that's the market that the wool's coming from. Yeah. And so, because wool is such an incredible fibre, there's so many different factors that come into it. Like I can't use the dags, and that I guess frustrates people, and I understand, I get it, but just to crush dags, because I can't put dags through the machinery, it'll just be a disaster. But just to crush dags it costs 70 cents a kilo. That's not going to be good for crossbred wool. It's not viable. But look, for the merinos, different story. So there's all these, variables that I've had to deal with, but, it's still a learning curve. It's, I'm still learning, and, it's going well. Like the business is still growing, and I feel like I'm growing on a steady path rather than, growing exponentially to a point where I can't supply the people that are wanting my product.
So you'll be standing in a few days. You'll be standing on your stand at the Melbourne
Flower and Garden Show.
Flower and Garden Show, should know that. And so what do you? I guess people that you've already said, people come up and have no idea what they're expecting. But what's your sort of main selling points for those products in terms of, and what do you see lights up their eyes of the range of things that we know are good about wool? What's the thing that will get people buying your product and then ordering some more? What have you seen as sort of the things that they really resonate with the market?
Oh, I can give you the spiel if you like. I feel like I love
the spiel.
I feel like I've got it down packed now. So I've got a lot of signs around that give the benefits of pellets and what they are and everything, but people still love to hear it from the source. So wool pellets are a product that's made from 100% wool. It's a slow release nitrogen that also holds 3 times its own weight in water. And when it breaks down in 6 to 12 months, and it releases all these incredible nutrients into the soil, and it's essentially feeding the microorganisms within the soil. When it absorbs the moisture, it actually swells up, so it aerates the soil at the same time. Not only that, but breaking down, it'll break down to 50% carbon, so it completes that carbon cycle. It can also be used on top of the soil as a slug and snail deterrent. And how it does that is if we look at the wool fibre underneath the microscope, specifically the crossbred wool fibres, made up of a series of scales. On the end of some of those scales is a barb. So you remember those woolen jumpers that you used to wear that would really irritate your skin? Same principle goes with the slug and the snail. Those little barbs irritate the bottom of their foot, so they don't like it. Another one of wool's properties is that it'll pull that moisture away from their foot, and they don't like it. So realistically, whether you're using the wool pellets under the soil or on top of the soil, you are benefiting that soil and your plants to ensure better growth and moisture retention within your soil.
Great. Where do I buy some?
People normally are just blown away by all these incredible facts around wool, and giving them the spiel, they're just like, wow, we didn't know. We just didn't know that this product was out there. But, I'm talking about wool, which, a lot of people wear, and, but we're not wearing crossbred wool, and just explaining that to them as well. They normally have a few follow-up questions like, well, do you add the nitrogen to the wool pellets? Nope, it is 100% wool. And look, trust me, I've had quite a few people disagree with me and say, no, you must be adding something to it. And I have to tell them, look, I put every single kilo of wool myself. I do all the processing myself. I put it through that machine. I can guarantee you I do not add anything to it. It is just the wool. So, and, I get funny questions from people like, but it's not white. They're not white. Well, no, it's not white because greasy wool is not white. So, and then a lot of people say to me as well, but wool's not biodegradable. When a sheep dies out in the paddock, the wool's out there for ages. And then explaining to them, because they haven't grasped onto that concept of, well, the microorganisms can actually only eat the keratin that's on the inside. And so that's actually, surrounded with the lanolin and the wax. And so they can only eat from end that has either been cut or from the end that is growing out of the animal skin. And so with the pellets, the difference is because it's been essentially ground up, the surface area where those microorganisms can eat from is a lot higher. So hence the faster use of the product, but yet being still a slow release.
Is that why you went pellets? Because, obviously it's a lot easier to get weight into a bag and just, as your home gardener, it'd be much easier throwing a few pellets around than it is a sort of fleece of wool. But, I guess you would have come through lots of iterations of chop it up fine or so I guess pellets is where you ended up for that reason.
Yeah. So the other thing is through the process that the pellets go through is that any seeds or any issues that may be with that wool are actually rendered completely useless just due to the process. And
yeah, cool.
So, whereas I'm seeing a lot of people now using the wool from, say, their pet sheep and putting it out on their gardens as a mulch, and I'm 100% for that as long as it's on your own property, because the thing that worries me is when people get wool from other people and they're putting it on their soil, do they know what weed seeds that they're bringing into their property? So, then that goes to the mulch mats, hence the reason why it's scoured and carbonised.
Yeah, people would be you'd be frowned upon a bit if you heap of barley grass growing out of your mulch mats. It'd be
exactly
wouldn't cheer up too many home gardeners.
No.
I'm just trying to fit. I could Google this, but I can ask you easy. Yeah. What size pallet are we talking? Just so we can sort of physically.
So I generally tell people it's like your slug and snail pellet size. Maybe just a little bit chunkier, but around about that same size. Or like the pellets that you would feed your sheep. You get pellets fed to your sheep.
Cool. And then your blankets, which, by the way, Sophie, our podcast producer, loves that name, and it is a good name. So that's a felted product. So that's the kind of thing you would chuck around a tree you planted, like a freshly planted tree, to keep the weeds away, or bigger than that. Do you do that in all shapes and sizes? Or
absolutely. So I've got a few different products. I've got the blanket squares, which they're really good for, and we've had great success utilising them around our strawberries.
Oh, yeah.
You put them around your strawberry, you plant, it's already, established, or, you can plant it and then put them around. So I do 20 centimetre and 30 centimetre squares. And that way, your strawberries or your other fruits and vegetables are kept off the ground. And they also, the same concept goes in regards to the slug and the snail deterrent, because they don't like going over the top of the wool. And then I've got the blanket rolls, which come in a couple of sizes. I do 5 metres and I do 30 metres. So they're more for your bigger gardens. You just roll them out. They're really simple to use. Roll them out, cut the holes in them with, a pair of scissors or a knife where you want to plant your plants, and give it a good soaking water, and there you go. It's acting as a mulch mat.
And that'll get sort of 12 months biodegradability, but I guess when it's on the surface it has less bacterial pressure, so do you get a bit longer out of it? Or?
You do. Absolutely you do. I say, and again, like you said, it very much depends on the organisms that are in your soil, that the better quality soil and higher microorganisms you have within the soil, it's going to take like a shorter period of time to break down. So, it's very dependent, but we say, between 12 and 2 years, you'll get 12 months and 2 years, you'll get out of a blanket mulch mat. But the reality is as it's breaking down, you just, the next year or in the year after, you just dig it back into the soil. So you're adding wool, you're adding all those other benefits, like I mentioned around the pellets. You're getting all that back into the soil anyway. So, it's not like using the plastic mulch mats where, you may get a lot of longevity out of them potentially, but, think about all those microplastics that are going back into your food that you're trying to grow, or, in the flowers and all that. So, I think it's a no-brainer to be adding something that can benefit your soil, whilst also, acting as a mulch in the meantime.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I know the answer to this question, but when you're felting it, obviously you don't need to add, some woolen products, you've got to add some structure through nylon or something else, but obviously in a felted product that's got its own structure, there's nothing else. It's just wool.
It's just the wool. Just the wool. And that's what makes it really incredible. And through working with the team that does felt the wool, I'm actually able to put back through a lot of all their really tiny short fibers, which, when you think about, like, if it was for a doona, my product is not at all suitable for a doona, because what happens is, because of all these short fibers, it actually can beard up. They call it bearding, where, it's not going to be suitable for those products. But when they are creating those products, they're getting these tiny short little fibers that are falling through the cracks. And so instead of those guys having to, dispose of those, at a cost to them, we're running that back through with my product. And so, again, cutting out waste from what they're doing and putting it back through, because if a little fibre of wool goes into the soil on your garden, you're the winner. So, it's about reusing and recycling that as well. And, these guys didn't think of that until I came along and said, hey, Tony and Adam, I've got this idea. And they're like 100% behind what I'm doing. And then when I said, yeah, we can use that, they're like, oh, you've just, saved us, XYZ money for having to go and dispose of it. So, it's a bonus.
Yeah, cool. What do you reckon, I guess, just for people out there who are thinking of any idea, not necessarily using wool or whatever, but living, like growing up where you have, being out in the bush in Victoria, I guess what are the challenges been of starting a business like this have there been any challenges? And I guess you got any advice for people that are looking to do something differently and with their careers?
My biggest advice is to back yourself. If you are sure something is going to work and you've done your research as well, like I said, I did quite a lot of research, but backing yourself and having the confidence in what you're doing and, holding the right values to, align with other businesses to work with as well is really, really important. And being able to accept that it's not going to be perfect all the time. It probably never will be, but still putting, yourself out there and your product out there, you're going to see benefit from that, even though it is a challenge. And sometimes, like I've always said, there are people out there who can walk faster than I'll ever be able to run. And, it could go belly up tomorrow, but, I know that I've given it the best shot that I can. And, when people think about wool pellets in Australia, I'd like to think that they're thinking about me and my product. So, there's always going to be challenges in business. Like, don't even get me started on social media. It is the bane of, I think, every business owner's life, but it's just part of life these days. However, you need to find where your niche is. And I've found that doing talks with community groups and schools has been really beneficial for getting the idea out there, and the people start to talk about wool more. And to me, that's one thing that I'm even going to ask of your listeners is, just tell one person. Like, I'm not asking you to tell 100 people, just tell one person about wool and how it's benefiting the environment, how it can benefit the soil. It doesn't even have to be about my product specifically, because like I said, there are hundreds of other people out there around the world doing incredible things with wool. And if we can start talking more about how good wool is for the environment, I think across a huge different number of industries within the wool game, we can benefit everybody. So, yeah, there will be challenges. It will be difficult, but we've only got one life to live, and I feel like I wanted to leave some sort of legacy to future generations, and if this is how I do it, then great. If not, I'll find other things to do. So
excellent. I guess that, back yourself and be willing to fail is like the key things that you can't get anywhere unless you're willing to make a few mistakes along the way. And the only way you make those mistakes is if you have a crack. And obviously there's all those quotes about you miss every shot you don't take and all the rest of it.
Yes.
I guess of your products, which one do you see as the one that could end up in every Bunnings store in Australia, or will all of them end up there, or Bunnings or whatever, Mitre 10 or whatever plant retailers there are across Australia? But is that the aim, that you'll get out of garden shows and you'll end up sort of going mainstream, or you'll do a bit of both?
My goal is actually more so in the farming game. I would love to be able to produce at a scale where farmers can utilise, especially the wool pellets, in a broadacre scale.
Yeah, right.
That's the ultimate goal. It's going to take a lot of time to get there, and a lot of money, because these machines are not cheap. And then through my experiences, there's a lot of other things that come into it. But that's the ultimate goal. Broadacre usage. There's been studies done, I believe in South Australia, where if you can hold 2 to 3 mils of moisture within the soil, that can potentially hold over a crop in a dry period for an extra 2 to 3 weeks, and that might mean the difference between a not great harvest to a good harvest. And in especially, like, we're going through a terrible drought at the moment in southwest Victoria, and I just keep thinking if we could get the pellets into the soil to be able to grab onto the moisture that we've had, even though it's only a small amount, it could, be able to be discovered by the roots of the plants, and then hopefully, grow from that. And that's just, one of the positives from the wool pellets. So, while I would like to see, the products be used across, in cities, in home backyards, in farms, it's the whole kit and caboodle, and it can be used everywhere. So,
yeah, and I guess if we look at, the reason I went straight to Bunnings is because I live in a city in New Zealand, and I buy glyphosate by the 100 mil rather than 100 or 1,000 litre shuttle, and know the markup that I cop every time I buy anything to use in my home garden, and so there's obviously a lot more upside immediately anyway in selling 100 grams or a kilo of something versus a ton of something that you would have to, like, the price point for a farmer is going to be very different than what it would be for Mrs. Smith with putting something under her roses or whatever.
Absolutely. And you've got amazing people over there in New Zealand doing similar things, like New Zealand Wool Mulch. He's doing pellets, and he's absolutely incredible. You've got people like Floating Peaks and SustainaGrow, I think they're called, doing the similar products to the wool pots, and you've got the New Zealand Wool Pot people as well. So
some cool stuff around.
There are some incredible businesses in New Zealand doing amazing things as well. So I just look at, even worldwide, Mongolia does 2,500 tons of wool pellets every year.
Oh, right.
Mongolia. So, for Australia, where, we used to ride on the sheep's back, why were we not doing it here? But it's okay. I decided to do it, so we're doing it now.
That's good. How far through the 5-year stockpile are you?
I'm actually through majority of it, and we have pretty much. We're still on, getting a few stragglers shorn at the end. So yeah, it's obviously being that we've got to shear sheep every year. We're always got got wool coming through, and I'm lucky enough to be in an area and I would say in a 10-kilometre radius from our farm, I would have a lot of wool to be able to buy, hopefully, from farmers in the future, and be able to produce quite a lot more pellets.
That's awesome. So you can obviously just buy another machine and put it next to put another set of life savings into another wool pelling machine.
Yep. I think I would definitely buy because at the moment I've only got what they consider the small machine, which when you're forking out the money, it didn't feel small. But there is a much larger machine. But you never know. Ideally, I would like to work with, an engineering company here in Australia to build one here in Australia, because that's another big value of mine is keeping what we produce here in Australia. So, that would be awesome if I could get an Australian company to create a larger machine.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and that's all these opportunities that you haven't. Yeah, you keep pushing anything is possible. Last couple of questions, one that we've asked a lot of guests and a new one that we're adding to our repertoire, but we could chat all day about wool pellets, but we better keep cracking. But one thing we like to ask people is, what's the last thing you've changed your mind about?
I'm a woman, so I change my mind all the time. I'm the first to put my hand up about that.
Yeah.
But it's okay. We're allowed to. It's our prerogative. I just recently, I am releasing a new product at the Flower and Garden Show, and I am pretty sure that I have changed the name of this product 10 times, and I'm still not happy with the name of the product, but it's a Flower and Garden Show exclusive. So for those who want to see it, they'll have to be there.
Right over, yeah.
But it's forever changing, because you want to get the name right, and like I have with I love that I've got blanket pots and I've got blankets, because how can you go wrong? It's a plant blanket. It makes sense.
Yeah.
So as simple as the name of a product, that's where I've changed my mind a lot.
I sympathise with you there, and for lots of reasons. Everyone who knows me well knows that I can't do anything unless I've got a name unless it's appropriately named. Is where I start with every project, with every product, really. So I'll hear you there for sure. And the last question, which is a new one for the show, I was chatting actually with Nigel Curran the other day, and this question came out, and I think it's a good one to add. And so it's, who's the best human you've ever had the pleasure to learn from?
Oh, look, this is when I think about this question, it's an absolute no-brainer. It's not just one person, but it's both of my parents.
Yeah.
Look, my dad's 80 and he is still flat out 100% on the farm, and he will never stop. And his work ethic, as well as my mum's work ethic, it's just incredible. And I think a lot of people learn a lot from their parents, and that's definitely where I get my work ethic from is from my parents. And that's where, I've got my mum coming with me this week to help me at the Flower and Garden Show. And, it's a lot of work for her, but she thoroughly enjoys it. And so, all of their advice and their support for me when I said, I'm going to do wool pellets, and I'm going to, instead of buying a house, I'm going to take all my life savings and buy this equipment from over in Europe. They were like, do it, 100%, let's do it. You've got the passion, you've got the knowledge, and without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, I am very blessed to have their support, and able to use them as a sounding board as well for ideas and situations. And I think it brings joy to my parents to see, me putting my products out there, to have a website, to, even to just show my dad like the silly little reels that I make for social media. He just thinks it's absolutely amazing. And they're definitely people who I lean on for support and who I've learned the most from. Yeah, they are the best people that I've ever learned from, and always getting advice from them.
Excellent. Well, that's a fantastic way to end the show. I'm so glad that I asked that question. Yes, Sherri, it's been awesome to have a chat. Really, really love what you're doing and love your passion for the industry and really getting out there and having a crack. Wish you all the best for the garden show coming up, but obviously beyond that. And yeah, you've already had lots of successes with the accelerators and being the first female winner at Sheepvention and a whole other things. I'm sure there's more awards heading your way as well. But yeah, really, really appreciate you taking the time to explain your journey and your product. And yeah, we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. Thanks again to Heinegger, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Thank you to M&SD Animal Health and Norflex Livestock Intelligence. They offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. We thank both of these companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.